I'd like to call the Budget Advisory Board meeting of Wednesday, December 10th, 2025. Call to order. Before we do roll call this evening, we have two new members so far present. And I would ask, start with David, if you could introduce yourself and give us just a quick, elevator of yourself.
Name tag says David Ortolani. I go by Max. But that was a choice a long time ago by my father. So it's my middle name. Been down here in Fort Lauderdale, lived in South Florida now for the last 10 years. Came down here in 2016 as the hockey director for the Florida Panthers. And now I work in corporate relocation from Port St. Lucie all the way down to Miami. And sit on the Chamber of Commerce, which is how I met Dr. Sorensen and was introduced to this board. So I'm very, very happy to be here and willing to learn from everybody here and hopefully make an impact on our community. So thank you for having me.
Okay. And what you do?
Hello, my name is Anid Mitchell-Thompson, and I live in District 3. And my commissioner, Pamela Beasley Pittman, she introduced me to the board. And South Florida is pretty much home to me. I was born in Haiti, but I've been here practically all my life, from elementary school all the way. I'm a product of the Florida public school system. It actually works. And I'm happy to be here, and thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And we will have, I think, on the next city commission agenda, there's another recommendation for appointment. Is Josh here? I knew he was going to try to make it, to learn about us. So, but so then that will give us a full board, correct? If it's a move.
There'll be 9 members. So
Nine,
we're just
so-
doing the members.
Okay, so we're still missing one from District 3. Okay, very good. Well, welcome, Melinda. We have 2 new board of the 3 joining us so far this evening. Matt sitting next to your left. Anita, I'm sorry, Need. Across from you. So with that, I would ask for a roll call.
Ms. Belker?
Here.
Mr. Kale?
Here.
Mr. DiGirolamo? Ms., did you say Matthias Thompson? That's how you say her name?
Yes.
Ms. Matthias Thompson? Ms. Milroy?
Here.
Mr. Ortolani?
Here.
Ms. Perryman Jones? And Chair Brown?
Present.
You have a call.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'm going to jump down to new business as we have to do the elections for chair, vice chair, and then the revenue estimating representative committee member. But I will turn it over to staff to run the elections for the chair since I can't do it myself.
Thank you, former Chair Brown. So what we do at this point is we ask for nominations for the chair for the upcoming year, and it would run from October all the way through September is the term. So anyone on the board would like to make a nomination for chair? Go ahead.
I would like to nominate Bill Brown to be our chair.
Are there any other nominations for chair? Hearing none, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I guess I'll go for.
All right, so former Chair Brown, you're now new Chair Brown.
That went fast.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Before we go on with doing the further elections, let me just jump back and ask for the approval of the last meeting minutes from September 17th, 2025. Even the new members, I think it's been ruled that you can vote on them. Even though you weren't present, but are there any additions, corrections to those minutes? Have you?
Move to approve.
Motion by Ms. I'd like to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Minutes are approved. Is there anyone from the general public that signed in wishing to speak tonight?
No one has signed up.
Okay, very good. We will have a walk-on item after the election. We'll do that first. It's a presentation on a recommendation of an ordinance change that they are trying to get before the commission at the next meeting, I believe. So we'll take that up as first order of business of new business once we conduct the elections for a vice chair. At which time I'm opening up the floor for nominations for vice chair. Want to continue?
I'm happy to continue.
Okay. So I don't know as chair if I can nominate, but
I move to nominate Melissa Milroy to be vice chair.
are there any additional nominations? Okay. I think by acclamation, but all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No. Congratulations. Next order of business is we need to elect or select a revenue estimating conference committee member. Just for the new members, this is a person that is a member of the Budget Advisory Board, but then they participate as our representatives at the revenue conference, which meets twice a year with OMB, Budget Office of Management, Budget and Finance, and who else? You want to just quickly give for the new members so they know what it is?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. So you'll learn a little bit more about this when Keith does his presentation later, but the Revenue Estimating Conference Committee estimates general fund revenues through 2 meetings per year where you meet with departments who present revenues along with OMB team. Finance, there's a representative from OMB and OMB staffs the committee, a representative from the Finance Department. The Audit Advisory Board has a representative that they nominate for the committee, and also the Budget Advisory Board has a spot on the committee. And you get to spend 2 meetings like digging into revenues with us. It's super fun, coveted position. So if you get nominated, you're in for a treat. You'll learn a lot about the revenues.
Okay, I know Ross had done it for many years, so, but it needs someone that's got some knowledge of our board of revenues, so, you know, I know, is there anyone interested in it? I know your plate's full, Linda, too, so.
Yeah.
So,
No, I would like to nominate Olivier Kelly to be our revenue estimating conference committee member.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Congratulations. Look forward to some detailed reports. I'm sure we'll receive those.
I'll do my best. With some colors.
Chair's going to take the privilege of moving a walk-on item up first, so some of the staff members can present. It's going to be a very quick presentation. I estimate it's going to take long. Tonight, we have Carl Williams, Parks and Rec Director, and then we have Judy Erickson, who is the Beach Improvement District. What's your official title with the Beach Improvement District?
Program manager,
Program Manager.
Recreation Department liaison to the.
So we've been asked to weigh in on some ordinance change, proposed ordinance change that will be going before the commission, and she'll tell us when that's proposal was set to go before the commission. And with any ordinance change, I think it takes 2 readings, is that correct?
2 readings.
2 readings, so at the commission, not before this board. Okay? So Judy, the floor is yours.
Okay. So, good evening, Chair, members of the Budget Advisory Board. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. So tonight we're going to talk about the beach food and beverage proposed ordinance changes. Quick background, you can go to the next slide. The program began, as a 1-year pilot project in 2022, and then it became permanent in 2023. Currently, we have 9 hotels participating. The ordinance allows hotels on Fort Lauderdale Beach within the designated area to apply for a license to sell, serve, and deliver food and alcoholic beverages. Oops, I'm too quick. on the beach. And for those that have hotel guests and also people that are renting a beach chair from our concessionaire. And these updates align with the Budget Advisory Board's recommendation to look at ways to increase revenue for the general fund. So to better understand how our program compares with other coastal cities across Florida, we looked at the, we did a coastal city survey, looking at across the state of Florida. And basically only Fort Lauderdale Beach and Miami Beach have programs like this. So looking at what we charge, it's $25 per room, hotel room. Miami Beach charges $32. These are fiscal year 2025 numbers. 32 per room. They have a flat fee and they have an annual 2.5% CPI escalator. So the proposed updates are to go from $25 per hotel room to $30 and to implement a new annual flat fee. And then it shows the revenue to this over on the screen. You can see we would go from fiscal year 2025 of $64,450 to $88,140. And the second proposed update relates to the streamlining the annual renewals. And that's having the city manager have approval to approve the applications rather than going to city commission. But first-time applicants would be required still to go to city commission. So next steps, this was presented to the Beach Business Improvement District Advisory Committee at the November 10th meeting, and they were supportive. And then I'm here tonight with you for the Budget Advisory Board meeting to get your input. First ordinance reading is December 16th, and then second is January 6th. And with that, do you have any questions?
Okay. I'll open it up for discussions, board members. As president of the Central Beach Alliance, which is all the 9 permits are within the Central Beach Alliance neighborhood. Since the program started, there's not been one complaint. And it's been very, very well organized, no issues. And I think there's a lot of support for that administrative review after the first probationary period, I guess is what you could technically call it, that where staff would approve it. However, there's been some discussion about some residents would like to see in the ordinance that reserves a right for a commission call-up if it was needed. Similar to a planning and zoning approval that would not go to the commission unless the district commissioner would call it up or a commissioner. All of these current licenses are in District 2's commission district. What is the feeling on a call-up for discussion? And Carl, I was under the impression, but I guess it's not the case, that with any type of ordinance or any approved administrative approval that the commission always reserved the right, but I don't think that's necessarily the case.
Yes, so good evening, everyone. Carl Williams, Parks and Recreation Director. So ideally, the impetus of this was to expedite our normal process. And if there's a desire to add some neighbor feedback, we certainly do that as part of our due diligence so that we can continue to monitor. Or if there's a persistent effort in wanting to have that, we can accommodate that as well. But the general thought was to have a process or an avenue to allow us to expedite these quickly, because we have, I want to say, roughly 9 hotels that participate in the program. And this city is about to close our 3rd year of this program. Hasn't, as you mentioned, pretty much hasn't had any real issues to the state.
So with that, just thinking timeline, if there is, just keep the way what you're asking for today. Keep it, it would go to the commission on December the 16th, ordinance first reading. If there was public input at that ordinance hearing, then the commission could give direction to amend the ordinance as submitted and come back on the 2nd reading if they so choose the commission to put for public or for commission call-up. I think that might be the most appropriate way to handle that. Okay. And my second question is, going back to the back slide where Miami Beach, okay, that one where they do an annual 2.5 CPI escalator. Is there any reason why the Beach Improvement District chose not to put an annual escalator in?
I don't know if they chose or didn't choose. I think the idea was that we were kind of sharing what our feedback was in the conversations that we had with the city manager's office. But if there is a desire to have an escalator, that also can be it. So, but that just wasn't a part of the original conversation.
Which the thought of the,
Immediate thought is, why not? And if it's locked in or presented from the start, there is less resistance later. My other question, are there any negative side effect that residents may have complained about this alcohol on the beach, those licenses? And do we have more hotels that are going to participate in that program? Are we actively pursuing the expansion of that?
So, as I think I mentioned this, we currently have 9 hotels currently operating, and all of those fit within District 2 parameters. But there may be an opportunity, I believe, for one hotel that falls in District 4. Don't quote me on that, but I believe
There will be full capacity, I mean, that's it.
there
There's
will be.
probably 3 hotels that are not participating for various reasons.
Various reason being,
One hotel, their legal team is, reviewing it, but hasn't been comfortable with it yet on the hotel side, management ownership side. The other, they have a new general manager. So it's usually changing ownership groups. I think at one time there were 10 hotels, but now it's 9. I do know that 2 are planning and trying to, join the program. I don't know if they're gonna be able to do it right in January, but they are looking.
there is potential, but you don't know when it's gonna translate.
but it's not a large number because
I guess.
originally when the ordinance was written, it had to be a hotel facing the ocean and it had to have a certain number of rooms, correct?
So I was thinking of the small hotels on the, not on the beachfront, but the parallel street, I never remember the name.
And then they did a change, Ben, I think you're shaking your head, you know more about this too, that they took it to Breakers Avenue to one side that would encompass maybe picking up an additional hotel back on Breakers if they chose to do so, which they've not chosen. And then we also took the ordinance change all the way to Oakland Park, which allowed the Pelican to come in if they chose to. And did they come in,
I don't believe they're doing food and beverage service. They do have a chair concession though.
Okay.
They could.
So it's, even if, but do you know what, recall off the top of your head, what the threshold of number of rooms is before they even qualify? It had to be so many square feet, Ben, you remember? Yeah, I know you and I worked on that, so it's not the small mom and pops that qualify, nor could they put 2 or 3 together to try to qualify. It had to be.
So it's a freestanding
Right.
minimum.
Right.
Okay. And that's regulatory limitation, or is it, who decides of that restriction?
That would be,
Limitation.
that would be part of the staff review of the permit fee if they qualified, if they meet the ordinance requirement. Am I correct to that?
Yeah, and Chair Brown, to respond to the question about the escalator, we're still in the infancy stages of this program, obviously the 3rd year. We kind of stair-stepped up each time. This board challenged us to go back and figure out revenue generating opportunities. We didn't feel like it was good to come back and say, we want to increase this by 15 or $20, which would be 200 or 300 or 400% of the current rate. And so I think right now we're still looking at a stair-step approach. I think once we get to that equilibrium point, I think that will be the year that we'll look at doing an annual escalator from that point forward. But I feel that we still have areas of opportunity for growth, and an escalator might actually hold us back.
Okay. So, but we could always come back and amend it at a later date with other revenue recommendations. I'm sure we'll be looking at throughout the year.
Yeah, and truthfully, I think this will be something that we'll be looking at relatively frequently. When we had this originally, it's a pilot program to at least allow this as an opportunity, as a service, as an option for hotels, beach So as Ben mentioned, the idea is just to get this kind of up and running, especially with these increased fees, because there is a mix here. And part of the conversation that we had with the bid is that they were relatively in support of this particular increase. Of course, nobody wants to pay more, but recognizing that we're on the lower end, just makes sense.
And Carl, just to clarify, right now, the way it's working, there's no, you guys, staff could just review and approve the renewals, there's no call up by commission.
So right now, the process is annually, we would reach out to the hotels to garner their interest. If they are interested in renewing, they would pay the applicable fees, they would submit our insurance, and then we would go to commission for that
Oh, so
process.
right now you
Yes.
still, okay, you do have to,
Yes.
okay,
Now, that process tends to be a little lengthy because
yeah,
for hotels to then go and grab insurance and provide their paperwork to us. Sometimes it takes a couple months to do that, and so this way, this will allow us to kind of expedite that process so that because there's also a code enforcement portion of this as well.
sure, okay.
So yeah, I would just say that in general, I think something like this, I think it's great that they're moving cautiously forward with the increase. But I don't see the need for there to be call up at commission. I think this is something that the staff can manage the renewal process. And I think that making it expeditious is important and not micromanaging some of this stuff. So that would just be my take on it.
And I can tell you if there's a problem, the residents of Central Beach are going to be very vocal coming prior to that staff review, so I think it will self-correct itself. Do we have an estimated cost of additional revenue now based on the 9 hotels and the?
It's actually on the
right
slide.
here, yeah. So with the fee and the increase going from 25 to 35, the room fees would go up to 77,000. And then the annual fee for the 9 hotels, if we only have 9 again this year, would be 10,800, so total 88,148. But I do expect maybe 1 to 2 joining.
I was just gonna say though, I mean, we both sit on the beach council for the chamber, which is, you know, and I remember when this was implemented and they were trying to get it implemented. It was something that the hotels really wanted. I think it's a great amenity for the destination for these hotels to be able to serve on the beach. I mean, we are a tourist destination, so I think we also have to look at it, you know, as being a business friendly environment. And I don't see if, like you said, there really haven't been any issues from the residents. So I don't think there's a need for call up unless there's an issue. If you're doing it yearly anyway, I think it's a great program.
And for the new members, the Beach Improvement District is the hotels themselves, the top, 10?
They self-tax themselves, right?
That is a taxing, they have the taxing authority above and beyond the ad valorem tax rate that they put on, and then it comes to their budget, which is a standalone fund in the city's coffers. But, you know, the membership of the beach improvement are the hotels, the general managers or their designee. So if they're, in my opinion, if they're supporting this and making this recommendation, they've agreed to impose upon themselves for the hotels. Yeah. Okay.
Chair Brown, I also just want to make the board aware that the ordinance does have language in there dealing with enforcement. So the city manager has the ability to suspend, revoke permits if there are infractions. And there is a formal appeal process should they not agree with that. So I know that a lot of the conversation was about the call-up provision, but if it doesn't have a call-up provision, there is an enforcement or a response that the city manager can.
From an administrative standpoint, because they're taking it to commission in 6 days, we can make a recommendation, do a vote. Officially, we can't till the next meeting approve it as a communication to the commission, but we can still go ahead and put it in, and then staff can carry that forward,
Absolutely,
correct?
yes.
Okay. So the chair would be willing to entertain, if there is so desire, a recommendation from this body based on the proposal that staff presented. What is the desire? Support?
Support.
Okay. So the recommendation is that the Beach Advisory Board supports the Beach Improvements District proposed ordinance as presented. And so it normally would come under new business, but I think we can move it forward, take the vote now. But I would ask it be a roll call vote since I think that's what we need to do. Well, we have to get
So I
it.
think,
We had the nuance that Melinda was introducing with, we recommend that city staff is able to make the decisions.
and I think that that's part of their proposal already.
Is it?
Yeah, so I think that that's.
Or if it's in part of the language.
Yeah, I think it's inherent in their proposal, so yeah, so Chair Brown, like, just so moved as per your, I'll make the motion that you said that we will support the
Recommendation. of
the
Beach Improvement.
recommendation of staff as presented in all aspects, and that we don't have any additional amendments at this time.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Belker,
Yes.
Mr. Kale,
Yes.
Ms. Matilas Thompson, Ms. Milroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ortolani,
Yes.
Chair Brown.
By the way, standing up is Assistant City Manager Ben Rogers for the new members.
Didn't sit next to my name tag, I apologize.
I'll point out.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay, moving along for new business, I will turn it over to for your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. A little bit of context to remind existing members and to include new members to that. Why is it that I am trying to present something tonight? So after 30 years of private sector business experience, various fields, and 1 year at the BAB, I've tried to learn as much as I could about the different dimension of the budget, city budget. And it's complex, it's interesting. And I believe that BAB's mission is to offer advisory to the city commission based upon a deep understanding of the critical challenges of the budget, revenue, thank you, and expenses, and the balancing act that the city manager and staff have to lead. The context is fiscal year 2027 that we're gonna start working on in January. Seems to be particularly challenging in terms of maybe millage rate policy change to actually compensate the deficit between expected revenue and expenses. So I'm not OMB and I'm not trying to be.
Like you can be part of the family.
No, that's not, thank you, but that's not my intent. Nor am I a city auditor person. But I think like you, every one of you, I'm capable of reading documents, adding up and subtracting numbers, and maybe sometimes making a chart to show something. So what I started doing 8 months ago for hopefully the budget of last year that we have adopted, and it was not possible for reasons of timing. I've updated that for the past 8 months with homework to sort of present you with a framework of a recommendation and insight from the Budget Advisory Board how to approach the challenges of fiscal year 2027. It's a framework, it's a roadmap, and of course, it's not ideas that are not backed up by some numbers. I try to present them in context with my modest understanding, which is not the one that people who have been with the city for 20 years or 10 years would have. So I may have made mistakes. The thinking is the essential thing here, and the roadmap to, are we interested in pursuing that as a board to work towards the fiscal year 2027 budget and possibly have a recommendation to the city commission about decisions or option is the key. So designed to raise big questions. Just as a reminder, there is a charter and there's a website of the city of Fort Lauderdale that reminds us that we provide the city with input regarding the taxpayer's perspective. So we represent the communities of our district. So I think having the customer view, the residents' view at the heart of our thinking, not accounting, not city auditing, but the view of the residents, the perspective of the residents is important. We start with that in the development of the annual operating budget and the consequences on the burden that it can represent for Ad Valorem and other charges that the taxpayers pay. Review projection and estimate from the city manager regarding revenue and expenditure, and advise the city commission on service levels and priority and fiscal solvency. And then submit a recommendation to the city commission, no later than August, but the first workshop, joint workshop is in April. So we would have 3 months if we were interested in working as a team to go towards a recommendation and what it would look like and what it would entail. My approach that I'm proposing to, and I had from the beginning, was let's start to have a high level diagnostic of the challenges, understanding of the big picture. Second, a roadmap towards solution. If we have problems, what solution could we explore? What avenues? Various area of interest optimization. And then there will be a recap of the optimization potential and millage rate policy decision or options or ideas. Again, I'm going to go through this presentation relatively quickly. If there are some questions that are really burning that you don't understand, the chart, feel free to interrupt, but for the sake of going through the reasoning and the thought process, I'd love to not go into the weeds today, although you had a PDF that was circulated a little late, but you can refer to it for more details and I can answer those questions at the end. But I'd like to have us keep the big picture about the process, the thought. So the diagnostic is, I reviewed a lot of numbers from fiscal year 2023 to fiscal year 2026 with each book, and those data are publicly available. I also looked at the expenditure and revenue projection for the next 5 years based upon Stantec, which is a consulting company that helps us, project those things. So what I observed is, apart from Ad Valorem, some department revenue sources and rates have stagnated. Not all of them, but many of them, and we saw that at the revenue estimating conference last year. Ross Camarada made a report, and some rates have not been updated since 2017. Revenues were stagnating. So, and the projection from Stantec, it's only increasing 1% annual rate in the next 5 years. So we're not talking about a big increase. The general fund is becoming more reliant on Ad Valorem growth. And we saw that it constituted 46% in 2023. It's now 48%, and it's projected to be 53% by fiscal year 2030, according to Stantec. Future projection of growth is projected, the hypotheses are 6.5 or 7% of 6.56%. We used to enjoy 12 or 13% in fiscal year 2022 or 23, so that's half. And interestingly enough, the share of new construction comparatively to overall construction, the share is not increasing anymore. I think we can agree that maybe we have reached a plateau, a maturity in the real estate bubble development of Fort Lauderdale. I don't have any crystal ball. I hope it's not true, but the share of new construction declines. That's what I observed, and we'll have all the charts further down. This is a high-level picture of the diagnostic. So I want to put all those points of the diagnostic together. Last but not least, third point is our city government is structurally more bloated. I know it's not very nice to say, but has a higher ratio of employee and budget per capita than other major Florida cities that I've compared to. I haven't compared to every Florida city, but I try to compare apples to apples. Now, it can be disputed, and we had some talks with Laura and her team that, it's not the same burden. The cities are not the same. Some services are shared with other municipalities for some cities. So it's not purely apple to apple, but it gives us an idea, and you'll see that we're generally 20% higher in terms of ratio compared to other cities around in terms of budget and per capita, per resident and number of employees. We can expand that benchmark, by the way.
Did compared to those major Florida cities, did they have equal or above the same amount of growth as Fort Lauderdale?
I didn't go into that, but we probably should go into that. I couldn't cover everything, and I'm only one person, and I've done my homework for the past 6 months. So there will be a lot of things that we can add as a team with the help of staff, and I'd love to do that if you choose to encourage this approach. In the past 3 years, I also observed that the real ops budget, not only the general fund, but the total budget of the CHC department that we generally focus on, police, fire, TAM, public works, etc., have grown $139 million, and it's 24% in 3 years, so that's 8% per year. And the charter office's budget grew an overall 70%, from 52 million to 90 million. In the same 4 years, salaries and benefits, so I include salaries and fringe benefits, have grown to an alarming 30%. Constituting 63% of our ops, projected to rise by 45% and represents 70% almost of our general fund by 2030.
And for the new member, I know you don't want to interrupt you, but
A little bit.
for the new members' visibility, what percentage of the employee staff are governed by union contract wages? And that's what's driven the cost.
North of 80 for sure.
More than 80%, yeah, so a lot of that is driven by contract negotiations. It's out of the control of.
Which is not even under our purview.
Yeah.
We are aware of it. But it's still a fact that we have to, take into account in the general picture, the reasons why, but the reality is that. So, and last but not least, our city is also facing a competitive growth pain in infrastructure. We have a conjunction of water treatment plant, water and road infrastructure, new city hall, the new police headquarters. So that had a heavy debt and capital outlay on top of those trends. So we can have some differences in terms of how serious. I initially had a compound of alarming trends, and I changed to concerning trends. It's more the overall picture that I think we should look at and say, maybe we have a deeper revenue challenge. But don't take my word, for it. Look at Stantec. They project a 11 million deficit in 2027. That goes up to 77 million in 2035 if things remain unchanged. So the solution is maybe an increase in millage rate, 0.55, to actually balance the budget, and only till 2034. So increasing the millage rate has a lot of, different consequences for the residents, and it's a heavy policy decision, but we need to contemplate that according to Stantec projections. And now we can discuss that maybe Stantec is a little in their modeling, and I look forward to the meeting in January. We can see how different components impact the modeling and may change that perspective. But I started with that because that's in the book, and that concerned me. I'm going to go back to the taxable property value and the ad valorem revenue. In the past 18 years, we've enjoyed an incredible real estate development, the bubble. Past 10 years, 11% CAGR, 124% total. And since 2007, so in 18 years, 216% in real estate development taxable basis value. The next 5-year forecast is 6.5% and then 6%, as you can see. So the future development is based upon half the growth from the past 10 years. What I looked at is also the part of the new construction evolving from 2015 to 2025. And as you can see, some years where, pre-COVID, 2.94%, 2.28. And then after COVID, obviously, things picked a little more, 2.64 and 3.44. And now they're back to 2%, 0.89, and 1.76% for 2025. So it's not anemic, but it's not as jolly and exciting and expanding as it was. So what it tells us is maybe we have reached a plateau and we should be less reliant on at Valorem if we want to plan for the rainy days or less sunny days. It's interesting that staff always likes this chart that they present of the city of Fort Lauderdale millage rate benchmark with other Broward County cities, Fort Lauderdale being the biggest, and we have remained constant for the past 18 years. But the property value in the same time went 216% or 19% in 18 years. So we went from 20 billion in taxable value to 58 billion. So remaining constant in millage rate is not really a performance when you explode in 200% in taxable income. It's nice, but it's not a performance. Also, I would add for the reality of the picture that you have a millage rate, but you also have additional charges. I have my tax bill here, my tax property bill, and there is an assessment, fire assessment, there is a park bond. So I paid a little more, 30% more than just the 4,1993 on my bill. So the reality of what the taxpayers end up paying is not behind this 4,193 that we love to talk about. So my point there is that we need to remember the customer view. I mean, I like saying customer view because I come from the private sector, the resident view, but I think they are our customers too. And especially to the politicians who are leading our city. We need to remember the affordability factor. And I think we have a problem in Fort Lauderdale about that. This is a chart in progress, and I didn't finish it because I think we should do the research ourselves as a subcommittee or group, whatever we can find in the best way to do it. But basically beyond the monthly budget that it takes nationwide, to feed a family and to close a budget, to balance a budget, there is also other charges that come from the city level that we have control over. Not electricity, but water, sanitation. All that is also adding a weight. So should it take basically a minimum 100K household budget to face the economic pressure and over cost of living in our city? We can decide yes, we can decide no. The reality behind that is, what is our social demographic profile? The reality of our city. Seniors, an estimated 20% of the population out of 189 residents or 190. Poverty, an estimated 15% of the population lives in poverty, according to the census data for Lauderdale, and also I added some Broward County statistics, United Way's Broward report, sorry. So household with people with disabilities, another 8% of the population under 65 has disability, and low-income renters, according to a Broward County affordability study, low-income seniors and people with disability are among those most vulnerable. So when you take a look at the percentages and you apply to 189 people, there is some overlap because you can be a senior and be poor and have a disability. But all in all, if you add all that, it's almost 100,000 residents in economic vulnerability. It's more than half of our population. We're far from the Monte Carlo, Florida picture that I've heard from the city commission or some members, or from the glistening beachfront that we have. It's good for revenue. We want that. But we have to remember the structure, the reality of our residents. I used to be a community, a secretary of my homeowner association. I had a lot of interaction with other associations through the council. We hear the voice of residents. They can't make it. And some of them are also our city employees. Some firefighters have to live somewhere else and to commute to come to the city to work. And we know that the city pays appropriately, depending on the level and specialty. So should we really have this kind of burden on our residents? I think as a BAB, we should remind with a little bit more research beyond that of the reality of a budget, what it takes and how much of it is impacted by the decision that we make as a city in terms of sanitation fee, water bills, new water meters, to keep in mind the pressure beyond the ad valorem and the tax property. So with that picture that's not so rosy and it presents some challenges, you're gonna ask me, how do we get to a solution, a roadmap? So big picture, and I'm gonna go fast. Fiscal year 2027, a pivot year with big challenges. It's a necessary turning point, I think, and I feel. Is a sudden ad valorem hike inevitable? There will be a political price, a backlash from residents, I think. And some city leaders should probably hear that before it happens. We should prepare contingency for potential tax property state reform because the mayor has talked about it. And I said, what are we gonna do if we don't have a replacement? It's not gonna happen so fast, but maybe it's time for us to actually, instead of whining about it, saying, hey, this is our contingency plan. And maybe a good time to trim 5 years of high city ops budget growth. We live very well because we were fueled by beautiful real estate development. Then our approach should be simple: increase revenue and decrease expenditures. That's what I do at home when I lecture my husband about it. We need to increase our income or we need to reduce our expenditures. I think it would be very healthy for the city to do the same. So it starts with revamping and boosting the declining revenue streams and the fees that we had over past years. So let's look at all of them. Look at reallocating funds. Can we reutilize or reallocate some funds within the fiscal guidance and regulation that we have? I'm not familiar with them, but you will probably guide us through that. And maybe efficiencies. I also don't read A, B, and B to not get into the weeds. Let's go to 3. Also explore future levers of optimization. Optimize procurement. Our new city manager made the city procurement department more accountable now and with a full leadership. So let's see what they generate in terms of economic impact and how we make project happen faster, less expensive. So probably levers of optimization there. Are we maximizing grant? I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea. However, I think it's a question that we should all have in our mind. And AI, everybody talks about AI. Lots of private sector companies have already applied AI and lead to job loss, yes, but also efficiencies. So why don't we actually start to conduct real life text project and quantify cost efficiency impact? I'd like to see that in fiscal year 2027 in the proposal of every department or where it's relevant. And last part of the plan, the roadmap, is let's have a work plan together, if you agree with that approach, of course. Let's prepare option with CC staff, and they can correct us, they can guide us. I welcome their stewardship, but we're still in charge of what we feel we should look into and the recommendation that should take place for April 2027 for our first workshop with the commission. So I'm not gonna go again over this.
Before we move on this slide, I'd like staff to kind of give some input so that I think you have you're looking at AI options, correct? There's there's national conferences you've been going to, that it's something new coming from municipalities. But there has been some.
So with the adoption of the FY '26 budget, we actually funded the addition of Microsoft Copilot as a citywide initiative. So we're finalizing the pilot project now. And that pilot project has gone department by department and introduced not only the tool, but also asked, what tools do you need to incorporate AI in your everyday work? What do you see as a benefit of AI? What areas would you like additional investments in to be able to fully incorporate it in the work that you're doing? And so we've already started collecting that data on who's using it, what return we're starting to see from it. And we anticipate that we'll be bringing that back to this team, so you all know that the investment that was made in AI is having a meaningful impact in the work that city staff is doing.
And then as far as it relates to looking ahead, I know each year in the budget, not that I'm trying to counterpoint here, but we've never been sure, but I think you reach out to department heads and do an exercise.
Yeah.
What actually, have we ever done a exercise saying a 5-year, what if we had 5% cut or 10% cut?
We've done that more times than I can count, unfortunately. But we do it every year, and what we ask people every year is, what programs do you have that may not be performing the way that you would have liked them to perform? Because while we look at things as expenses, a lot of organizations say, well, 5% cut or a 10% cut. We know that every dollar that as a city we're spending is impacting a resident in one way or another. So what we usually say is, if we had to reduce our budget, and we try to streamline our budget, what programs would we target? What programs are having the least impact? What new initiatives did we start that aren't having the return that we anticipated? And then the other thing that we do is account by account. We look at how people are utilizing the funds that were appropriated over the last year. We do 3-year trends to say, you know what, we've been budgeting this amount. We're looking at ways that we can streamline that. It looks like your utilization is less than that amount that we've been budgeting. Now's the time to take this down. Or we've had this program, it looks like it's changed in the way that it's operating. We may have had an efficiency in the way it's operating. It's time to take that down. And so we look at it from a lot of different lenses before it ever gets to this group. When you get that packet, that the department has already met internally to figure out what they need to operate over the next year. They've already met with the OMB team to figure out what OMB has seen as trends that need to be addressed in their budgets. They've met with the city manager's office, again, to figure out alignment with policy to ensure that what is being requested is aligned with the guidance that the commission has provided us. And then we present it to you all for alignment with what the public is asking.
But as we go on for the new members, the commission has asked us to give ideas.
Yeah, I would not limit that to AI, but I think that's a subject we should finally get, and I would add to your question, and in response to Yvette, it would be interesting to be able to quantify
Absolutely.
the optimization.
Yep.
Because if you see a number for the BAB and for the city commission, it's gonna take a different reality. So let's have a pilot. Let's have a result of here's how we can optimize and how much it can represent. Not necessarily in terms of cutting jobs, it can be in efficiency, but that's part of the picture. So it's one of the levers. I'd love to get back to plan and the big picture, if you don't mind. The proposed work plan for BAB is to really be ready in the next 3 months with an organization that needs to be defined within the constraint of Sunshine Law. But in the private sector, we have subcommittees who work on one aspect. Melinda, you take the revenue lead. Chairman takes another lead on another subject where we feel there is more to dig with city staff. I don't know if that's possible within the confines of Sunshine Law, but we should be as effective as our partners at the city when they meet among themselves as teams. So why not try to do it as effectively as that too? So there is a compound, a perfect storm of structural and circumstantial factors that should lead to a more defensive approach of city budget planning. I'm not going to extend too much on that. You know the number of bonds and the variety of bonds, and according to the book, fiscal year 2026, about 2.5 billion over the next 5 years on top of our 1.2 billion annual budget. That's a real picture of the cost. So our approach increased revenue while decreasing expenditure. The logical way that I started 6 months ago was, let's increase revenue, redirect and reduce expenses. And I found only 5 different buckets of interest, but there are probably some more. And AI could be a 6 if you want to isolate it that way. But I put AI across all divisions. So to me, it's everywhere. The left side is going to be more about leveraging, and the right side is going to be more about leaning. You know, if I went on a diet recently, so I'm going to try to leverage in terms of, I'm going to lean, of course, about the food, but I'm going to try to leverage my budget to eat healthy and have good ingredients. So one is looking at the revenue loss. Obviously, the revenue estimating conference report from Ross Camarata last year, you know, started my wheels turning on that. Reevaluate the CRA fund. That's what I had as a stupid idea 6 months ago. And of course, there were adjustments. So it's less of a relevant bucket, but I think we should still continue to look at it, how it's developing, and maybe the criteria of performance, and does it work the way it should work? And I think that's part of the BAB purview now. Utilize excess fund balance when there is a lot of it. And recently the city manager offered a measure that actually utilized the fund balance. I was not privy to that when I wrote that. And on the leaning, budget cuts are obviously one area, and identify ops redundancy or optimization, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to scare anybody. So let's look at the revenue loss first. And I'm going to give you some examples to apply the thinking. Ross, the revenue loss in terms of a projection first, before the report from the last year. So the contribution to revenue from Ad Valorem is going to grow to 53%. And it used to be 46, and it went to 47.8 in fiscal year 2025. And it's going to expand less, half of what it used to be in the best years, 3 years, 4 years ago. Then most other major sources of revenues, the sales tax, the charge for services and fine and forfeiture, are projected to grow less than 1%. 1% is not a lot compared to 8% growth in government. It's 7% less. So we can't say that it's dynamic and sustaining our revenue. License and permits declines and remain at similar level. And only the franchise fee and utility taxes, 17% of the total revenue, are projected to grow, not even to a great rate, but 4.5 and 3%. So the 5-year forecast is showing a lower revenue growth from every key fund, while we depend more and more on Valorem, Ad Valorem. So is there a deeper revenue challenge that we are facing? The revenue conference last year, and it's going to be interesting, and I'm very humbled by having the task of participating to that exercise this year, but showed that, for instance, the business tax estimation, the trend was lower. The last rate increase was 1997, the permit fee. So you have all the numbers. And when you add all the numbers, it's 14.4 million in terms of revenues from different departments and sources. So you have tennis lessons, youth program, swim club from Parks and Rec, the fines and ticketing from FLPD, EMS fee, the liens from finance. So, as a projection, if we did a 10% adjustment or increase, or as a target, as an objective, or 25%, we go from 14.4 to 15.4 or 17.4. That's an optimization of 1 to 2 million. Okay, so maybe there is an urgent need to update the rates and extract more revenue at every level of service across city departments. We're gonna look at sponsorship as well and events in the city. That's another slide that's coming up. But before that, business tax revenue. There was something in March presented to the commission coming from a GL service consultant that showed that the impact of raising the local business tax rate on a 9-year schedule. And it was showing $1 million more from a 3 to 5% increase over 9 years, which is $1 million over 9 years. Well, I looked at, you know, the average business tax per business versus other cities. And it's only a small sample. We can expand the sample. We can do more research if you'd like. But Fort Lauderdale is lower than some and higher than some. But if we were average benchmark, if we take the average of that, we can do a little better. And if we were to increase 25% or 12%, this is 25, 12 here. So, you know, I tried different brackets, projection. We're talking about from about 3 million to 6 million more over 9 years. So instead of doing $1 million over 9 years, we can go to 3 to 6 million over 9 years. I think that's a little more interesting. So maybe we should dig into that. There's some limitation, maybe?
Yeah, so exciting news and also the limitation. So unfortunately, the state regulates that we can only increase business tax 5% every other year. And Olivier is absolutely correct. We had a whole study that was done to look at our business tax rate to determine if we were competitive with our neighbors, but also where there was room for enhancing the program. At the time in March, the commission was only interested in enhancing the program, so consolidating the number of categories that we had for business tax purposes. But this board really shared with staff that they thought that that was something that we needed to address again. And so the city manager provided guidance to the community services department, and they actually took it back to the commission. And I was trying to look at it while we were here, but I believe it passed, or they've already gotten positive feedback from the commission on actually increasing the rate. So it's funny, and not to interrupt you, Olivier, but a lot of the things that you all have shared with us over this last year, I'm excited to share that we are already starting to make sure that we were doing a lot of this stuff on the back end, but I don't think that we were publicizing the way that we were doing it. So we're looking forward to sharing our revenue enhancement ideas. We're bringing that to you all in February or January. In January. We're looking forward to sharing some of the changes that we're making behind the scenes so that you all can see and have confidence in the work that staff is doing to make sure that we're advancing the initiatives that you've shared with us.
I just asked Melissa, I thought council to address that and they did, so.
That's really exciting, and that shows that even when I started 6 months ago about those ideas, we're on point. So for a newbie, I'm glad. But I think we can also bring our contribution to staff with our ideas and brains, probably as a BAB, and maybe add to that, and maybe, you know, we can discuss it further. But it's another area where a long overdue rate increase would bring our city to an average benchmark, not even going aggressive. We can decide that we can't, you know, we can't do more than what we can, but the fact that we're lagging is not a good sign. I'm gonna go to the city events. So overall, there are lots of events, more than 60 measured per year. I counted 36 city sponsored. And Parks and Recs did a proposal in March 2025, suggested some sponsorship and hospitality area for the 4th of July, the New Year's Eve downtown, and Summer Jazz. And the private event fee was recommended to increase from $17K as current between A1A Marathon, Turkey Trot, Eagles Festival, Tortuga Show, to a bold increase of 420% to 88,000. So I know that some city leaders, I think the mayor has commented on the fact that we don't want to scare them off. But I'm curious as to where are we now, because I'm not privy to how is that it has, translated into the reality. So I don't know if somebody has an update to share with us.
Carl's not here, but I will. We just had a meeting and I'm sitting on that committee, representing the Budget Advisory Board of stakeholders. They have a meeting on the 16th again. But on the stakeholders, they brought in the Beach Improvement District, the Chamber, downtown. Linda, you're part of that. And I think there's some consensus to move forward with some of them. However, it's the big signature events, maybe like Tortuga. They think it's a little deep, hard cut, hard hit in some challenging times. So they're asking maybe to grandfather them in, or even a new big signature event. So it's a work in progress, but I think at the end of the day, there will be something that in the fee structure that comes out of it.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Because the next step is, in my mind, we know how much it costs for 36 city events, activation for 0.5 million budget from what I gathered, 500,000 visitors altogether.
But real quick, we're not addressing that committee is not addressing sponsorships. And I think that's something we would like to hear of from staff of where they're at with that.
Yeah.
And Melinda, did I miss anything on that committee meeting?
No, I think you did a good summary. I think, the main thing is like, we understand the need for the increase, and Carl did a presentation to a stakeholder group. I think that the idea that Bill mentioned about that there's certain signature events that should probably be grandfathered and not have like a 400 to 500% increase, because like truly they will leave Fort Lauderdale, for example, Tortuga. So, and that's not just about, what that represents as far as to just, the city budget. It's really the economic impact for the region, which is huge. So, we don't want to scare away Tortuga, or for example, our air show.
Let's put ourselves in the focus.
Exactly. So it has to be, I think there has to be some, insight used with regards to events like Bill mentioned, signature events that are in a different category. Tortuga, for example, would be one of them. And I think that that's smart, because we don't want to suddenly chase people away, but we do also want to make sure that we're smart about the events, and that obviously there can be some areas for revenue generation. I think there's also an idea that, the concentration of events on the Barrier Island probably needs some more oversight, but there are other places in the city where we could be doing more events. And we need to make sure that we utilize all of our city for events.
Just for perspective, the 26 private events from my research, and it's an estimate, don't hold me to it. But I have an Excel sheet, and from the admission price of different tiers of tickets for flips or for Tortuga, we can estimate revenue. And those, I put the Renaissance Festival for other reasons. It's not a major thing, but when you look at the number of visitors and the budget that those 5 top events represent for those promoters, and the impact it has on the infrastructure and the city resources, I think there is a legitimate question of, is there a better revenue recovery that the city could contemplate? And I don't know if it's in the form of either a flat fee of, I don't know what's displaying on the screen. Okay, either a flat fee or an entertainment on every ticket, even for public events. I don't think a $3 per visitor would scare off the family off. And they can understand that it's part of the recovery for the city in terms of cost and infrastructure, etc. and maybe a 26 private event, a hosting fee on revenue. All that could represent from 1.5 and 5.5, which amount to 7 million, or maybe another resort entertainment, whatever you call it, added to the bed fee for only the week where the events are taking place. I'm not talking about all year long. I'm taking the tourist revenue estimate of 5.5 billion per year and average 106 million per week. And I apply to 5 weeks of those events where they're taking place. And I try to get the potential revenue that we're talking about. And it's about 5 million. We can discuss one way or the other what's appropriate, what's smart, how much is too much. It's not my goal to tell you how we should do it. I think it's opening up on the potential added revenue that we could find and dig here. And I think we're getting trounced by those promoters who actually have a really great, so we don't want to scare them away. That's what I say here. But we need to be fair.
Some of that is county revenue though.
Yes.
that we don't-
Yes.
And the city is really limited. We aren't able to impose taxes other than what the state specifically says we can impose. So we can't just randomly charge people surtaxes. It has to represent a cost of service. Where if the city has a cost for providing certain services, we can charge. And then there's another provision under franchise licensing that we can charge. So we really need to navigate through the
Yes.
legal process to make sure if the goal is to charge for these events, that we do it in a way that's appropriate based
course.
upon what we're allowed to do based on state law and our local ordinances.
So this is not my specialty. I'm trying to help us, realize the impact and the fair share. People talk about fair share. Those promoters, those events are very profitable for them. And there is sponsorship opportunities that they also sell to global brands and nationwide brands, and they get money. So maybe it's a game of chicken. We don't want to scare them off, but we also need to be firm. You making money, the city has a cost to host those events, and we need to have a reasonable recovery fee, and it can take different forms. I'm in any way magically pulling it out of my hat, but I think when you look at the amounts that are at stake, I think it's worth the conversation. Another area of revenue loss, and I'm not going to be spending too much time because it might come across as negative, but we need to learn from the past. Inter-Miami has been not a great deal for Fort Lauderdale, and I'm not even sure what we are getting in terms of revenue left for not much in parking, I don't know. But I know that Inter-Miami moved to Miami with a Freedom Park, and the city of Miami found a way to get 2.6 million over the next 99 years of revenue. So they did much better than us, even with David Beckham. Bayamar, I don't know, according to the prediction, the forecast and what the city manager back in fiscal year 2023 or 24 presented, it was supposed to be $16 million per year. So are we optimizing this for the future? And this is where I'd like to focus our energy as BAB is, can we approach the future project that we have, in sight? Holiday Park, one-stop shop, there will be a replacement to one-stop shop. Something is going to be done. The new city hall, so till, not long ago, I thought maybe it would be a P3. So the real question for BAB to, going to the commission in a more structured way is, can we look at all the potential streams, revenue stream for the city? And if there is retail space, office space in the design of a building, can we optimize that? At least parking fee. And license or lease which breach terms, because sometimes from the past, I think we've seen that we were stuck with terms that we couldn't really change, amend, and we were not in a great position to say, hey, it's not working for us, goodbye. We were stuck. So maybe we need to learn our lessons for that. It's not simple. I'm not privy to all those details. How do we frame revenue stream for the city in the initial approach from the get-go? And how do we assess the value and reevaluate during the process? Is that a good deal? Is it gonna be a revenue stream for the city? How much can we count on it? So I'm sure it's, some amounts are in the projection of Suntech.
Before we move on, just staff, if I misrepresent, please correct me. But the commission at the last meeting selected a business partner, the P3 for City Hall. Now they're in the process of crafting the agreement, which areas, how they're gonna finance it, is it gonna, what percentage? Is it all gonna be 100% over a 30-year period? I'm like, or are we doing a bond, certain percentage of a 10% or something? You wanna explain what some of the options are for the new City Hall?
Yeah, so at the last meeting, the commission selected a partner that we will be using for the development of the new city hall. And really, they ranked the proposers 1 through 4. The idea is to begin negotiations with the number 1 ranked entity in order to ensure that they can develop a building that would really fit our budgetary needs and also fit our long-term planning needs. And so the financing is something that we'll include in those negotiations. You know, one of the things that we had our financial advisor at that meeting, one of the things that they shared was, given the city's strong financial position, we are usually in the best position to issue debt at a lower rate than a private company. And so we've done that in the past, where we've added that into agreements so that it's still a P3, but we're leveraging the city's ability to issue debt at a lower rate. So all of those things will be discussed over the coming months as we develop what that relationship looks like with the partners.
And I'm confident the staff will share with us at the appropriate times. Remember, it's negotiations, and there's some things they can't share until it's ready to present to the commission, but we'll probably ask for some of our input for that process.
And that would be great to be included, like Chairman Brown says, because at least we can know and maybe have an impact in some way. I'd like to not take too much of your time. I'm gonna go very quickly over the CRA funds because it's sort of a passé idea. I mean, it was not 6 months ago, but for the newbies, we used to raise $20 million per year, and Broward County was participating, 12 million, the city 9 million. It's been reduced because Broward County funding is no longer available. Bob was looking at how was it, managed? What was the framework? How much flexibility? What about the applicants' vetting? Because we have some examples where some restaurants were supposed to open, got support from the CRA fund and never opened, and it's not really great allocation of our money. And so we asked questions, and there's not much potential anymore. It represents $7 million per year, but it was renewed in September 2025 for 10 years with different parameters, and that is to be included in assessment every 2 years with metrics of success. So we should keep it on our radar, I think. 3, utilize the excess fund balance. So it was interesting that in past years, the excess fund balance was much higher than it has been recently. It used to be $30-40 million in fiscal year 2022, 2023, and 2004. So before I knew, our city manager, the new city manager, decided that it was a good idea in light of the PFAS settlement that we use some of the money, some of the 14 million excess, to, if my understanding is correct, to be reallocated towards some capital project that had been delayed. So it's great. It's an example that I could have probably imagined. The lesson is, if there is a potential fund balance excess over the minimum that we need to have good credit, etc., but we've generally been at 27%. So we are really comfortable in general. But in the future, let's think of that as how we can actually reallocate or recommend to reallocate, because it's part of the equation of all the monies that we can find here and there.
Do you mind if I just add one little thing? So one of the exciting things about that is $8 million of that allocation of additional fund balance of the amount over the 25% went to items that we were planning on funding in fiscal year 2027. So really the idea was to reduce the burden on fiscal year 2027 by investing in those projects early to help prepare us for the next year's budget cycle.
So going to the right side, after leveraging or finding money here and there and getting better at revenue loss or recovery. Budget cuts. So my observation is that we have an average 25% more per capita than other comparable cities. With all the, caveats that Laura in her office reminded me of, and again, there are lots of nuances that we need to keep in mind, and we're going to develop that together. But overall picture is that we are 20% bloated compared to other governments, city governments like Miami, Orlando, Tampa, San Francisco. We're not the best. We are very well staffed, but we are spending much more, in general, 20% per capita compared to other cities. And the key department's total budget has increased in previous years over, overall 24%. So it's 8% per year. But the idea was, can we make an exercise, and I'm sure it was done this year because I heard about it, but we didn't see it at the BAB, for city departments to prepare the next budget with some potential reduction. We could recommend, for example, a 5% objective for public safety as an exercise, and maybe 6 to 12% for other divisions. And again, that's an indication of we're not sacrificing public safety to the hotel of the budget cuts, and also the additional levers. That's where I'd like to hear some potential optimization in terms of numbers. As a BAB member, I would be very curious. But if we can explore potential 30 million target reduction, which gets us back only to fiscal year 2025 general fund. So it's not like crazy going back 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I think that would be a reasonable target reduction. Now, that doesn't mean we need to do it. Maybe we'll aim for 20, maybe we'll try to work with city staff of what's possible, but I think it should be in the framework of approaching this challenge of balancing act for fiscal year 2027. How can we trim the overhead, the admin, the non-essential personnel, and the growth of salaries without impacting the public safety, of course?
I don't know if you're aware of this or not for the board, because I just found out the legal challenge case, and there's a lawsuit here in the state challenging the fire assessment fee. And I just found out the chief's left. He was the one that informed me. But onto if I forget, a taxpayer's got a legal challenge in the court system, if it's allowable or not. And depending on how the court rules, it could go away, the fire assessment fee. Who knows? Of course, there'll be appeals, I'm sure, but it could take time. I don't know how far in the court system. I hadn't heard this from Daphne, but I think it's something we need to keep on our radar screen, because if we lost the fire assessment fee, what percentage of that budget would get off the top of your head?
We'll build at that point, I mean.
Actually, it's in our schedule.
Tax.
Well, yeah,
But
yeah.
There's a lot on the table coming from all directions. So my point, BAB members, is we need to prepare contingency plans. And we have to look at all those avenues and have an opinion, a recommendation to the city commission after working with staff on what seems to be reasonable. But it would be irresponsible from us to not do, as budget advisory board, our homework and prepare for those contingencies. Because, the city commission is going to look at us and where were you, Bob? You were rubber stamping and nodding. That's not our role. And I think we should be more aggressive and defensive in terms of looking at those avenues. I want to finish with identify ops.
Oh, I was just gonna answer your question. It's 11.9.
Yeah, so there's $11 million.
It's 61 million.
That's
It's
Yeah.
61.6 million, but that's
12%.
11.9% of our budget.
Okay. If we lose that.
Well.
And we
depending
are
on-
watching it very closely.
Depending on
What's that,
the.
that
We
lawsuit?
are watching the lawsuit very.
When was that filed?
I think it was recently filed. I don't think it's moved far in the process, but we are watching it. I don't know.
And I'm sure there'll be appeals,
I mean,
so,
it's been,
but
like
it might
Laura
not.
just said, it's been litigated many times,
Right.
and certainly some jurisdictions were doing an EMS on fire, and they said EMS wasn't allowed to be in it, but fire was, and this goes back 15
Yeah.
years or so, a long time, but yeah, that's it.
Just point of information, like why is that assessment fee vulnerable to these to being for these lawsuits and being like contested?
Yeah, so.
Like
in-
why that in particular?
In this case, the ground is whether or not you're able to assess a building for the provision of fire rescue services. So that, or in that lawsuit, they're challenging whether or not a building should be assessed for the service that's being provided, and whether or not it's a fair allocation as opposed to ad valorem assessment.
The basis of non-ad valorem has to be a special benefit to the property, which is unique from taxes, which do not have to have that nexus. So
Yeah.
in a special assessment, you have to do a study that shows, here's how we're allocating the fee and here's how this service provides a special benefit. And the benefits, really insurance, right? They're gonna come and put out your fire. So you can't charge for the EMS portion, but you can charge for the fire portion. That's why the amount we recover is only a portion of the fire department budget, which is 60 million versus the larger budget.
Thank you.
Just want to put that out there on the horizon.
Yeah.
Watch. Let's-
Last bucket of interest, or maybe looking at area of utilization, would be ops redundancy or efficiency, cost efficiency. People don't like redundancy, but I've seen it in private sector. It's not always bad. It's actually sometimes a way for a company to strive better and to get to a different level of growth. All funds and salaries and benefits, when I look at fringe benefits and salaries have increased by a lot in the past 3 years. Out of our general fund, salaries and wage, 5-year projection are gonna grow 45%. So that's, and to grow to 69% of our general fund expenditure. So those percentages, those progression, even if we have some maybe disagreement on some numbers. And more importantly, the charter offices, I added up all the budget increase from the past 3 years for 11 offices. So you have them all here. City Attorney Office, City Manager, Finance, IT, HR, City Auditor Office, Clerk, Mayor's Office, Stratcom, OMB, and General Government. It's a whole whooping 24% per year, according to the numbers that I saw in the book. So it seems very disconnected with our, loss of revenue projection that are, very anemic. The ad valorem reliance and the real estate is not as, feeding the beast as it used to. So to me, it's a very concerning point, and I think as BAP, we should have our attention. So I didn't revise those numbers. Those numbers were from fiscal year 2025. I looked at the budget for City Attorney's Office, which was 7.8, the ops budget for the City Attorney. And I looked at what could we do, 13%, 1 million in cost reduction. How? I'm not a magician. I think it's an exercise that the city manager or the leaders could lead if they choose to. But I think that could be part of our request and exercise with city staff. And when you look at all of that, I mean, Stratcom is 3 million almost. For reference, Stratcom in Miami, the city of Miami, which is twice the population, serving the population of 400,000 people, their budget is 2.3. The city manager's office of the city manager so far under Mayor Suarez was $4 million. For us, it's $10 million. So when I look at the overall monies, 68 million, and I say, hey, can we try to look at for 10% target reduction, 7 million out of 68? I think, can we slow down the constant increase in salaries and overhead of the central departments reverting to more sustainable levels in consideration of our expenditures and weak revenue projection? So I want to recap all that. I'm gonna pass this chart. And I'm gonna say, hey, look at the scope of budget for every bucket I looked at, and I add up the numbers in the different charts. So it's very optimistic because the business tax can be increased by more than 5%, blah, blah. So it's very optimistic. We're not gonna achieve that, but let's do the exercise of adding up every budget, scope of budget, every bucket, and the savings that I quantified on every one of the slides, and we get to a 60 million target saving. So maybe we can achieve that. Maybe it's gonna be 40 million, maybe it's gonna be 30. I'm not the one to set up those objectives, but I certainly think that we should think about what would be reasonable. But the main exercise here is, if you take those 60 million, how does it impact the policy option that we can recommend to the city commission? So we increase, we are at 520 for the proposed fiscal year. I didn't revise for adopted. It's not very different, but so 0.1 millage point is represents 6 billion in revenue. That means that the 16 million target reduction would cover a 24% reduction in that Valorem, which I don't think could happen. But a few months ago, people were scared. There were lots of signal that the real estate market was really weakening, and there was a lot of uncertainty with nationwide tariff policies and everything. On the other side, it could represent almost a point of millage reduction. I'm sorry, I'm blocking you all the time. I'm sorry. So 1% from, I mean, 1 point from 4.11932 to 3.133. The policy focus should be, or could be, anyway a turning point in balancing growth, the Balancing Act. But either we are focusing on city fiscal solvency and reversing the annual budget bloating trend, maintaining the same millage rate, maybe despite the slowing revenue, and maybe set aside a dedicated ad valorem reserve fund. I don't know if that's a bad idea, like not take everything ad valorem revenue expected and put some monies aside. But the other side of the equation, or the opposite focus, could be for the taxpayers. How about they're being told they need to be part of a millage rate effort increase, or we present them with some savings going to partial relief, given the burden that we've seen on their households with the microeconomics and the local driven charges that they're exposed to from the city. And 0.5 millage reduction represents 300 year on my homestead bill for my modest house. So I think for some people it makes a difference, but we could have two recommendations, and it's not what we're going to present. It could be a model of what we could recommend to the city. We're going for a hard, meaningful relief for residents and drastic budget cut. It's very extreme in one direction. And we say the city part is you cut $85 million on the fiscal year 2027, sorry, not 26. And you offer residents relief of 10%. So that leads to the same 60 million target saving, but you have 110% effort from the city in terms of fiscal solvency, and 10% gift, if you will, to the residents. Or you can have a middle ground policy and many others in between. You could have a combination of moderate millage rates, because it's we're going to do a partnership. We present to the voters, the residents, a necessary increase and modest in millage rate, but while the city is doing its part in savings and cutting the bloat of the government, or the growth of the government budget for past years. So that's more of a partnership. It leads to the same $60 million, but it's a 20-80. So it's 80% from the city and 20% from the residents. There are many ways that the city commission could decide one way or the other, or in between. It's our job to bring solid recommendation based upon a deep understanding of those challenges. And if we agree on this reasoning, to say, hey, what can we do, and what should we do? And there are various ways of spreading the benefits from the same target reduction. Now, if it's $40 million, we can do the same exercise and translate in millage rate reduction or increase. Lots of people in this room for the past year, I've heard them very casually say there will be a millage rate increase. Well, maybe we should not think of that only. We should think maybe we can do our efforts as a city and show we're doing this effort to the resident and say, hey, residents, we also need your help, and to a minimum impact on their budget. That's beyond my purview, but I don't think that's beyond our discussions and potential recommendation or communication to the city commission. A last point of perspective. Look at what City of Miami has done in the past 9 years. It was, the graph is from last year, so it's a little old, it needs to be updated. But they were able to reduce their millage rate by 11% in the past 4 years. So they went from 7.9900 to 7.39. Of course, they're high. We have a lower millage rate. So, you know, we can't compare, but they were able to have a significant decrease of 1 point millage rate. Other cities like St. Petersburg, with a population of 261,000 people, in the past years reduced 0.3. Palm Coast, smaller city, 0.44. We can have a different sample of benchmark cities. I thought Palm Beach Garden, which is a small city, had an interesting approach because they said we're gonna lower our real millage rate in fiscal year 2024 in light of a 15% increase in taxable assessment. Well, that's interesting because when we had this 200% increase in taxable value, thing we never thought of reducing our millage rate. We're very proud that we maintain it constant, but we didn't say, hey, since we're enjoying this beautiful wave or tsunami of increased taxable value and ad valorem, why don't we reduce it? So I think it can be inspiring for other people. Also, remember in spring, the embattled mayor of Miami-Dade, the Democrats said we need to scale back after a flush first term. She warned of lean times. That was in the spring, and she said their latest forecast for her administration showed a $48 million gap between expected tax revenue and the spending. So their outlook back then was to submit the budget cuts of 10%. So Broward County was contemplating that in spring 2025. The Florida Senate proposed a state spending reduction in the new budget. Again, that was in spring 2025. And when you look at what Broward property owners have, witnessed in September, they offset the commission cuts 159 funding position and nearly 20 million in recurring operating costs. And that led to a very ridiculous decrease in millage rate, but there was an effort in that direction. So Broward County is leading by example. Even Miami-Dade contemplated it last year. Who knows what they're going to do? So I think it gives us pause and perspective, not only for Lauderdale, but look at what others are capable of doing. So at our scale, can we go there, and how can we go there is the key. And the how is the sauce, and it's a secret. And that's where we need to do our work together. If you agree on that roadmap and you're interested in that approach, if you're not, I'm not going to continue. But I'd love to do that with you as a team. Prepare options. So maybe your feedback tonight. I'm sorry it's been longer with the Q&A.
I don't think we'll get a lot of. We're running out of time for feedback.
I'd like to discuss that maybe after you digest it a little more with the PDF that was sent, with a little bit of explanation and context that I offered tonight. Form subcommittees on select areas of optimization content that you deem appropriate or more interesting than others. You can sort in the menu that I offered. Maybe fine-tuning discussion with TC staff at the right time, in time for a formal draft of communication recommendations of City Commission. Remember, some city commissioners have asked us, Bob, to have some ideas and recommendation. I think it's our mission. I joined this board because I think it's our mission that we can make an impact. I didn't think I would do that work because that's a lot of homework, but I think it's helpful for my team to actually think of how we can prepare this turning point of fiscal year 2027, which is not going to be an easy peasy feast. So this is where we become even more relevant and we have to show our value. Question, reactions?
Well, I want to thank you. A lot of work has went into this presentation. A lot to think about. You know, and everything's not apples to apples. Let's keep in mind. You know, yes, the county did cut their rate, but then the county also picked up, what, $9 million additional income that they didn't have the previous year from the reduction of the CRA.
Yeah.
And I think and then their assessed value in the county went up. So they had additional revenue coming on the revenue side because of the growth. And I think the cut pretty much balanced out the CRA. Yeah. Along with a few other things. So I think we have to, you gotta look at it in the total comparison. So are there any questions or staff?
There's one, so Olivier and budget staff met a couple of times on this, and we agreed that this was good for a conceptual conversation. We haven't like double checked all the numbers and things like that, but he's challenging you to a conceptual exercise moving forward. One thing I would note, you know, there's a lot of discussion about new construction and us taking the new construction and floating staff. A lot of that is service level. When new condos come online and come downtown, or when new housing units are constructed, fire and police services need to be enhanced, new hotels, new businesses. So we can track for you as part of any exercise, the new construction, the revenue that was generated and the service provision that was expanded. A lot of the presentations to BAP from fire and from police have been about like how they need to respond to additional calls, how
Crimes
you
went
know,
up and we've
all
had
of those sort of things. So, you know, over time, you know, it's a great challenge, but staff wouldn't be able to put together response information. We didn't for today, but depending on where you all go in the exercise, staff's very happy to present and prepare information targeted at any of these areas to bring back to you as part of budget development.
And the increase in growth from my experience is there's been a lot of asks come in by department heads for additional, you know, positions that the city manager's office, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, were denied, but the increases were on public safety because that's where the emphasis was.
Yeah.
Or in public works and in project engineering because of the infrastructure problems and to get everything up and running. So
And another thing Laura had talked about was service levels. When we talk about those EMS trucks, you know, at some point we only had 2 on each one, and trying to bring the service levels up to have 3 on each. And that way you don't have to have an engine respond as well as the EMS vehicle. So we're trying again to increase those service levels.
yeah, and in response to citizens' complaints for code enforcement, adding nighttime code enforcement because of sound, Airbnb. So not that I'm trying to say, but it's not apples to apples or oranges, yeah.
No, it's not that simple, and in any way or shape did I want to provide easy solution. I think it's a roadmap to, it's a thought-provoking, let's keep the big question in mind. Let's not get into the minutia of everything. It's interesting to go into the weeds, and to be accurate, but the big picture, I hope, with this exercise is the challenges that we face and maybe the recommendation we can draft or work on up until April. I'd love to hear more feedback from.
Is there any quick feedback? Because we're at 6:45.
Oh, just very quick. No, thank you so much, Olivier. I think you brought up a lot of great points, and no doubt that we should not be just a committee that rubber stamps. I totally agree with you. Having said that, I think I like the idea of the homework and like us breaking up work and research. I don't think we can do it with Sunshine as subcommittees, because we can't really talk with each other. But having said that, I feel like we could break it up by individual on the board, on the BAP, And then if I was assigned something, then I could then work with city staff on my area. And then I could report back to the BAP. And so I could become like more of a subject matter expert in one area and we could divide it that way. But then we could report back at these meetings.
Some others have I've suggested that we could probably just do subcommittees as long as it's on record and it's monitored by city staff. So it's not like secret conversation, everything is transparent, like we're having a transparent conversation and interchanged right now. It would be a little more time consuming probably, but at some point, I think we are losing efficiency and effectiveness to work together by expressing single opinions in the chain rather than working towards a constructive consensus and a substantiated argument or idea. So if we can get the closest possible within the constraint of sunshine laws to do that, I'm counting on the leadership of Chair Brown
I don't have
to
a problem with
facilitate
that.
that.
Yeah.
If staff can
And
support it.
I think that the only other point I would make, and all in the kind of same ethos of your presentation that we've talked about before, is that we do want to represent our, our constituents and the residents. And so going forward too, I'm gonna do a better job at, advertising these meetings to my group, downtown. And I think that, we'll get ideas from our residents when they're aware of these meetings, but also if we are dividing up the work and we are focused on certain topics. And then having said that, I just wanted to reiterate my request from the last meeting, if we could actually see the property tax contribution by city district and or by neighborhood, only because as we're talking about, for example, staff, increases when it comes to, new residential development, high rises, and you need more fire rescue, like all of this plays in. I think we want to see that picture of what our city looks like, because then I think it also, it's not to like kind of, single districts out, it's to actually just give us the reality of who contributes by district, and also too, it shows like where there's huge expenses, resources needed. I know we had one of the busiest fire stations in the country like a few years ago, and it was overtaxed for sure, and it had service part of downtown. So I mean, I think all of this plays into just our knowledge, and also us being able to speak intelligently to our residential base, and also actually pique their interest. So I guess that's one of the other reasons I would still request that property tax contribution by.
Have a draft.
Okay,
I
awesome.
just need to meet with staff to finalize it, but we did one version and then there's some changes, but yeah, we have a draft.
Okay, awesome.
We'll send.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I was gonna make a comment before about just taking a deeper look into what non-ad valorem revenue categories have the most policy flexibility. I think that would be very interesting to take a look at what that is to, as you said before, to sort of shorten that gap in terms of revenue for the city.
And to piggyback on that, because I had a note, can we get an update? I know I heard the clerk's office was looking at fee increases on the freedom of information request. And also I know fire was looking at some of their fee structure. I don't know where all, we were briefed on it, but never heard where we're at with that. So
The good
not
news-
tonight, but yeah.
It's on your January work plan. So
Okay.
at your January meeting, we're actually be bringing back a lot of the fee areas that we've reviewed, as well as those that have already been increased in the interim since the last time we've met. So that you can get an update, but you can also provide some feedback on some other areas that we're exploring.
And could we get from the city attorney's office a graph to show on for the last 5 years, the amount of lawsuits that's been filed against the city?
Yep.
Cause I hear it'd be interesting to see if there was actually an increase, as I've been told, and we're in a lawsuit society, it seems like, and that's at the expense of the taxpayers.
Financial impact of it, yeah.
And then workman's comp claims as well. Workman comp settlements, there's been a lot of 150,000 settlements. Just listening to it at the commission level, I'm just astonished at the out of court settlements on workers' comp a lot of times, so. Okay, and then to keep on the radar screen, I'm sorry. Well, I want to come back and answer you, Samantha. We're almost at a year on the Invest Fort Lauderdale. I don't want us as a board to be sitting here 6 months from now and be having to make it at the 2-year mark. Because you're gonna reevaluate the CRA at 2-year mark. I take it, if you go back and look at some meetings, we wanted to have get some feedback on where they're at with all that.
There's certain.
I think
Yes,
it's
we have
already
that in our
set
work.
scheduled for January.
Oh, yep, for
Yep.
January
That's-
CRA benchmarks.
So the CRA just took back their new, not redevelopment plan, what's it called? Is it the CRA action plan?
Yeah, I
They-
think so.
So their new plan that's going to govern them over the next few years. And that's gonna go a long way with making sure that we're able to build in based on their plan, some performance metrics associated with measuring their success over the next 2-year increments.
So add to CRA, you will also wanna know about Invest Fort Lauderdale. So on your work plan, we do have the Community Redevelopment Agency. For the good of the new folks on the team, each month we'll print the work plan. And as it is modified, Charmaine will update it and send it out with the next agenda. So on the next one, we're putting Invest Fort Lauderdale in addition to the CRA. Was there anything else? Did you want a presentation on the property values or did you just want that sent via information?
Questions and
Okay.
decide if it's worth really digging into.
Great, we'll send that prior to the next
Yeah,
one.
thank you.
Okay, before we go on to the next item, real quick, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Samantha, who's not a board member.
Hi,
And
everybody.
just give a quick elevator bio of yourself, as we did
Um,
with the 2 new members earlier.
I apologize for being late, first of all. I am Samantha Perryman Jones. I have a business here in the city of Fort Lauderdale. I have cleaning service. So I do quite a bit of things for the city. Starting January, I'm gonna be working with Riverwalk. I'm going to be doing all of the cleaning for those events. And then, I do residential and commercial cleaning as well. I just want to be a part of the city. I've been here about 30 years now and never done anything in the city. And so now I'm just kind of getting my bearings. So
Very good.
Welcome.
Welcome.
thank you.
Staff, would you make sure, since she has contracts with the city, that she understands when any conflict of interest issues or when she can't vote on things? Just for transparency, I don't know how all that works, because I don't have contracts.
It's okay, well, we take care of that part.
You'll work with her. Okay.
Okay.
I don't want to see you get in trouble.
Okay. Thank you. Laura, that's my friend. So I'll make sure I don't get in
I
trouble.
mean, is that a valid ask?
I guess, and so, there'll be board member training, but, it's just, you shouldn't vote on an issue that's gonna personally benefit you. That's the basic concept.
Right.
So,
Okay.
you just would say, I can't vote because I have a conflict, so. That's
Sure.
at a high level, but we'll get you more information.
Okay, we'll talk again.
Please work with her, make sure.
Right.
Okay, thank you. We want to protect you, so you're on this board for
Sit here.
your term years. Moving on, the financial integrated policies, including the emergency reserve, and I apologize that you're running late, but you have our time. We're not gonna rush you. We have to stay over and do our homework after school. We're gonna do it.
Great job. And so I'd like to introduce Keith Farrell. He is our assistant budget manager for CIP or for the CIP and grants division of the Office of Management and Budget. He's recently been promoted to that role. He's been working with finance folks, people from OMB and others to really update our financial integrity principles. And he's going to be presenting that to you all tonight, including the emergency reserve that you all asked to read about.
Well, welcome, Keith. So for some of you that might not know why they're queuing you up, he started out as an intern in neighborhood support.
Fellow.
And he was one of the first responsible for getting these parking.
That's where I met him. he helps us organizing the logistics of our annual meeting for our homeowner association. It was what, 5 years ago?
2019.
6 years.
Keith is the superstar. He gets promoted every couple of years. 'Cause he just keeps learning and growing.
We haven't got
Super
Craig.
engaged. We're super lucky as a city to have him on our team, so.
And maybe while the presentation's getting uploaded, I'll just give a quick high-level overview of what we're going over today. So Budget Advisory Board, my name is Keith Farrell, I'm an Assistant Budget Manager. I'm gonna be presenting today on staff's proposed 2026 update to the city's financial integrity principles and policies. The city commission first adopted these principles back in 2014. And the intent was that staff and the commission would revisit these principles and the various policy components on a regular basis and revise and edit them as needed and then re-adopt them on some regular cadence. Not every year, but I think at the time, the idea was that we would re-adopt these principles every 5 years. If, as you see from the backup that was provided to you, that hasn't exactly worked out as planned, but with the development of the fiscal year 2026 budget, and especially as conversations around the emergency reserve fund came to fruition, it seemed like a good time to kind of dust off these financial integrity policies, not only to incorporate some guardrails around the emergency reserve fund, but also to do a full comprehensive review of the principles and associated policies. So just like basically as soon as the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget was published and put on the website, budget staff along with staff from the city manager's office and the finance department, we convened and went through the whole principles document, which I think everybody has a copy of. And what we produced is this 2026 update. And the intention of this presentation is at a high level to go over what's inside of that document, but then also share with you the guardrails and parameters we put in place or are proposing to be adopted for the emergency reserve fund, as well as share with you any of the other amendments that we made to the original version. And solicit your feedback and see if we missed anything. And then hopefully at the end of the conversation, I'll try to keep it brief, but if it's the board agrees, we would also be interested in getting your recommendation. And because the ultimate intent is to bring this to the commission in the beginning of the new year and re-adopt these principles. Alright, so the agenda is to talk about what are the financial principles, why do they matter, what did we as city staff do over the summer to revise them, talk about the emergency reserve fund and what guardrails we set in place, and then share the other amendments and solicit your feedback. So especially for the newer members of the budget advisory board today, I want to share with you why these financial principles and policies, why they matter and why they're really important for the organization. First, having formalized adopted principles and policies really strengthen the city's credit rating. It's something that the credit agencies look to see that we have on the books, so it helps to lower our borrowing costs. The second thing is that these principles really kind of act as our North Star and help clarify and communicate the strategic intent of the organization, so we're all moving in the same direction. The third reason is that these principles act as sort of an umbrella for the more granular policies at the organization level and at the department level, so that our principles can show up in our actions. The fourth reason why these principles are important is it helps encourage as an organization our long-term financial forecasting and decision-making so that we are future-focused. Next reason is that it institutionalizes our sound financial management. So as when I win the lottery tomorrow, and Yvette does, that there'll be some stability and continuity in our operations. it also just helps, we're talking, Olivier made a good point about using AI, and we're always looking to innovate and continuously improve. But these financial policies also have helped establish clear boundaries so that we're innovating safely. And the last thing is that we do this because we're asked to do this by the Government Finance Officers Association. We take a lot of pride in the recognition we get for our budget book every year. And one of the requirements of receiving that award is that we have some version of this in our budget book. So for those of you that have been a part of the BAB for a number of years, you will be very familiar with these policies because it's a section in our adopted and proposed budget. So when staff convened this summer, we kind of felt like we had three asks of us. The first, and you guys are most familiar with this, is that we were asked to establish those guardrails for the Emergency Reserve Fund. So that was really the impetus for this whole exercise. But then, as I said, we also wanted to thoroughly review these principles and associated components because it had been some time since they were last adopted by the City Commission. And we wanted to make sure we were doing that transparently and engaging you guys as the Budget Advisory Board, so you guys are getting to see them, the update first. The working group, as I said, consisted of members of the City Manager's Office, Yvette Matthews, Assistant City Manager, Susan Grant, Special Advisor to the City Manager, Laura Reese and myself from the Office of Management and Budget. And though they couldn't join us tonight from the Finance Department, Linda Short, our Director, Laura Garcia, our Treasurer, and Alicia Sheffield, our Controller, were also part of the working group. The four integrity principles that were in our initial current version and what we're proposing, they have remained unchanged. Principle one is around sound budgeting practices, which may have been most interest to this group. The second principle is on prudent fiscal management, more of the finance back end side of things. The third principle is making sure we have cost-effective operations, and principle four is around long-term financial plan. I'm not gonna go through every input principle in detail. I know it's getting late, but the first principle is really on ensuring that staff maintains a structurally balanced budget that supports the high quality services that our neighbors and visitors expect. And the different component policies that are entailed there are listed here. Some of them you guys are very familiar about. For the new members, you heard Laura Reese at the beginning, and Olivier was just elected to our Revenue Estimating Conference Committee. That is outlined in Principle 1. Along as our target and minimums for our fund balance, something else that you've heard talked about this evening. The second principle is on prudent fiscal management. This is all about staff committing to best practices around revenue collection, expenditure disbursements, asset management, and record keeping. And it has various components on P cards and risk management and financial oversight and reporting. The third principle is on cost-effective operations. And this states that staff shall be accountable to stakeholders through transparent and fiscally responsible decision-making. The first item on here is on performance measurement. The Office of Management and Budget has a division on strategy and innovation, and they centralize and work with departments on our performance management portfolio. Another component is our financial transparency. A few months back, we presented on the Balancing Act on the city's website. We also have OpenGov, which lists our budget to actuals and real time, essentially. It's a day delayed, but that's available to our residents as well. So that's a component of our third principle. And then lastly, the principle 4 is on long-term financial planning. And here, that we want to make sure that we're dedicated to investing in the future and enhancing the quality of life for residents today and for residents in the future. And this involves making investments in our multi-year forward-looking CIP, our multi-year Stantec financial forecast that's been discussed this evening, our debt management policies, and as well as our capital maintenance renewal and replacement. one component of that we spend a lot of time on during the preliminary budget phase is we have a lot of replacement plans that we develop with departments. And the intention of those plans is to both stabilize on our annual expenditures, but also to make sure that we're planning for the future as well. So at a high level, those are our four principles. Now I'm gonna just kind of talk about what are the new revisions and edits from the original adopted version of this document. The first, and I'll pause after this slide because I know that the BAB was interested in weighing in, was how do we set parameters for our emergency reserve fund? And when staff met over the summer to discuss this question, we kind of structured our conversation around two questions. The first of which was, when can these funds be utilized? And the straw man that we want to put forward to you guys today is that we feel like these reserve funds can be utilized whenever there's a formal declaration of an emergency by some governmental body or agency, and that the funds should be utilized for recovery efforts. And hopefully, in most cases, the funds will be used as a match for an anticipated federal or state disaster recovery fund. So that's what we are proposing. The second question we discussed was, what is the target, what's the right size for this reserve fund? I know that came up a number of times during the development of the 26 budget. And our proposal is that the reserve fund aims to maintain a minimum of 1% of our general fund operating expenses, excluding pass-throughs through the general fund. We also are proposing that if the reserve through additional appropriations or through investment returns, if the reserve exceeds 5% of our general fund appropriation, then those excess funds can be transferred to the general fund, of course, with commission authorization, and that's really what the target should be. So
Keith, before we move on, put it in perspective dollar wise, the 1% fee and the 5% fee. How much would that be?
5 million for 1%?
Yes.
4.8.
4.8 right now. Yeah, when you exclude all that.
So it also takes in all the other special funds, just, okay.
4.8 million.
Coincidentally, that's the amount that we put into it this year, so.
Just coincidence.
Coincidentally.
Reserve exceeds 5%.
And part of that was looking at where we were on past emergencies. So when we looked at Hurricane Irma, and we looked at what we had to put in as a match, it was $3.6 million, and that was in 2017. And that didn't even have like a major impact on our community. And so we wanted to make sure at minimum we were addressing what we've seen in the past, and that's kind of how we came up with that 1% number, but also not putting so much aside that we were doing it to the detriment of our neighbors and the investment in other programs.
So, not to throw a hand grenade out there, but I
Love
do like to,
hand
I just like to, for thought, it says can be transferred to the general fund. I would like to personally, see a caveat that says for capital improvements. So
Okay,
that it can't be
Pumps.
yes.
For the budget.
pet projects, yeah.
And part of the reason we did that is, so the general fund has a provision in there that when we hit over our 25, and I think it's actually, is it in this policy as well? Or, where if we hit over 25%, the idea is to use those funds for one-time related expenses, primarily the investment in capital. So if we were in an instance where we were below the 25% threshold, or we had encountered a few years of challenging times and the commission decided to move money that was over the 5% into the general fund, it may not be that it pushes us over the 25%. And so that was part of the reason why we didn't want to straight say to be used for a specific item, but if that's the will of the board.
I just throw it out for discussion because disasters primarily, when it hits a city, it hits their infrastructure. Okay?
That's a good point.
And that's,
That makes sense.
yeah, that's why you have public assistance and individual assistance. Public assistance is for infrastructure, roadways, bridges that are damaged, you know. So personally, I think that something that we should specify for capital improvement, which includes all infrastructure. So,
I like the suggestion,
Yeah.
though. I think it's great.
and I think the taxpayers would accept that.
Yes.
It might not ever exceed that, but at least it gives them some,
Guidance.
yeah.
Everything else looks good? Yeah. All right. Excuse me, the last thing I have to share is the other proposed changes to the document as a whole. The first, and these are the substantial changes, there are some minor changes throughout. Like the annual financial reporting document used to be called the CAFR and now it's referred to as the ACFR. So those types of tweaks are in there. These are the substantial changes that we felt were worthy of sharing with the BAB. The first is in the cost recovery component, and that's of Principle 1, Section B. We added a requirement that when we're developing fees as a city, that we should, as part of that process, look at our neighboring municipalities. And the other component is that we should incorporate an analysis of the overhead and indirect costing associated with whatever service the city is providing. We also made some adjustments to the general fund balance component, and that's also in Principle 1, that's under Section G. We updated the language to focus and include the commission's commitment to a target fund balance equal to 3 months. The previous version of this document only talked about the 2-month minimum. It's not that we don't mention the 2-month minimum, we just also mention the commission's target of 3 months. Olivia, do you have a question?
I remember that it used to be 2 to 3 months. Right?
Yeah, so we've always had the 2-month minimum.
Yeah, I mean,
And then when we present to the commission, we always talk about our 25% target fund balance. And it wasn't actually listed in our financial integrity principle, so it's really incorporating the thing that we've been talking about for so long into the actual principles.
it's formalizing it.
Exactly.
It's memorializing what, and that's a lot of what this exercise was just memorializing how we operate today versus 10 years ago. On that same section, there's language about staff will, if we ever fall below our minimum, staff will develop a plan of action to replenish the general fund. We had more explicit language about a timeline of 3 years to get back above that minimum as well. And then the third substantial change is in the section around financial oversight and reporting. The previous version had more had different deadlines for our financial reports for our ACFR. And this updated version in 26 just aligns those deadlines to the state statute requirements. We're still striving to get those reports out sooner, but this doesn't unnecessarily bind staff's hands. And the other component is that we just outlined what the responsibility of the finance department is with these financial reports and what's the responsibility of the Office of Management and Budget. We replaced the requirement for monthly financial reports, which are backward looking, to our current practice of quarterly projection reports that the Office of Management and Budget does. And importantly, that quarterly projection report still includes year-to-date actuals, so it has what the monthly report has, but it also has that forward-looking component as well.
Melissa had a question.
I'm going back to your capital improvement, when you know, not that it has to be only used for capital. And I don't disagree with it, but my question is there a scenario of an emergency where you, let's just say, need tons of police officers? And, you know, all of a sudden you can't move money to, you know,
So that
police,
limitation,
huh?
because of that limitation.
Right, so I'm just in my mind, I'm trying to understand that.
As we
Well-
talk about how we account.
Yeah, so one of the things, it's kind of two different parts, so the funds within the emergency reserve fund would be able to be used for any of the emergency response related expenses. What the chair was referring to was the amount that was over the 5% cap that we are suggesting for the emergency reserve fund. That if we were to transfer it back to the general fund for something that's other than emergency reserve, that we limit that use to
Like new parking.
a capital related expense. And one thing that Keith will maybe point out what section, cause I don't recall. But in the financial integrity principles, it outlines how we would use excess fund balance over the 25%. And it may be good, capital's one of them, there are
Unanticipated expenditures necessary to comply with legal commitments, initiatives that will reduce recurring costs or increase recurring revenues, or other one-time expenditures as approved by the city commission.
right, so it focused primarily on one-time related costs, like addressing legal concerns, capital expenditures. And so maybe we mirror that language so that it is primarily capital, but mostly, you know, those one.
So let me ask you, what are one time from history?
Right, so one time,
'Cause I don't want, not to interrupt, but
yeah,
I just don't want them to say, oh, well, we need special playground equipment for one
It's a
park.
one-time.
Yeah.
No, I
That's
agree
what
with-
worries me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So the uses of fund balance that we primarily do are capital related overages, so a capital project has gone over budget and we need additional funds to support that project, that is a big part of it. Accepting grants is also a really big part of it, so anytime we have an opportunity to use a grant to support either an existing or a new program, but it requires that the city provide a match to support that, we also use fund balance for those items. And the other part is unexpected, whether legal or other related expenses, to address things that are not ongoing programmatic expenses, but really unexpected expenses that are coming up during the year. And so again, fund balance is only utilized with the approval of the commission. It's not something that staff can direct. But it's always outlined specifically in a budget amendment, this is the reason why this source is being used.
So, I mean, I think, I personally, I can support the same that mirrors. Because if you're gonna do it, it's gotta go commission approval anyway, it's gonna get public input. But I think the bulk of it will go to capital improvements, or if you had to use it for a matching grant for resiliency, for disaster preparedness, I think that's a viable option, you know, I just don't want the fluffy
Yeah.
pet projects.
So I guess what we're trying to cope with is the right wording.
Yeah.
That is not too limiting, but still some sort of guidance and example. So I don't know how we can address
Some
that.
assurances to the public, yeah,
Yes.
And that's why I was thinking if you use the same language, because as Susan was just whispering behind me, you wanna share,
So Susan?
Susan?
so it wouldn't go into general fund revenue, it's just gonna move from one category of fund balance into the other category of fund balance that has those limitations already.
Okay,
So
by
that's why it would,
By definition.
Right.
by definition,
Okay.
it is going to
Okay.
being the same.
Yep.
So they're safeguards.
okay,
Mhm.
there's some assurances there, yeah. Good point, thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, I,
So, yeah, so that's the extent of the presentation. I know it's a lot to throw at you. I know it's also been a long night and there's a lot of new members, but I think the intention is that we bring this to the city commission at the beginning of the calendar year. I know the city manager, especially with the new emergency reserve fund, is interested in having some policy on the books. So I think we are looking for the BAB to weigh it in and provide some guidance.
go around the table, any group discussion or feedback on the presentation?
I think it's great. I think to adopt it, or re-adopt them, I'm sure you've already had, but I think this is a great presentation. I think you all always do a great job on it. I
really.
Couple things just to keep on the radar screen when you mentioned the balancing act that you do every year, that we had made some recommendations for, make sure that those don't fall off the radar screen for this coming budget cycle.
Yes, we've already incorporated that in our process for this year.
Okay, just, and then, Mr. Auditor,
Yes.
can we get some feedback from you on the presentation? Any thoughts, concerns, or?
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of things were already there, but I think one of the things I just kind of thought I saw on one of the recommendations on one of the first slides is an emphasis to follow, GFOA. I think we should also include the Florida statutes, because there's a lot of Florida statute requirements. I think it was the bottom one there, aligned with best practice. There's some best practice, you know, of course, in GFOA, but to also priority to be following the Florida statutes. There's a lot of financial requirements, you know, even as simple as when the financials, the AF, you know, the new financial statements, when they have to be delivered to the state and so forth. And a lot of, you know, internal control requirements that are needed for just general financial operations of the city. That's one thing that
Thank you.
Question, comment? Thank you.
And you know, maybe just one other thing is, again, the whole budget process is, you know, a very evolving annual thing. And I think one thing that kind of supports what we do too is that we do our annual review of the proposed budget that really, as Yvette said, we gotta look at 3 years of prior year activity and really look at it and make recommendations in each year on that. So that's another thing that adds to, I think, the financial support of the operations of the city.
And because this past, the current budget, I think there was a concern raised about tracking of police overtime. Yeah.
Right.
And so when we move forward, that's gonna be, good. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think it was great. I think it's a great document. I like the wording for the emergency management reserve fund. I noted, maybe I blanked out for a minute. I think you did you highlight the addition on just that if it's a transfer within the same division that the city manager
I didn't touch on it in the.
is allowed to authorize that doesn't have to go to commission. I noted that change,
Yeah.
which I think is
It's the
fine.
current,
It's your
practice
current
right now.
practice,
Mhm.
yeah.
So that's under principle, for the good of the group, that's principle 1, section I. We did just elaborate a little bit on the difference between what is a budget transfer versus a budget amendment. A budget amendment is to move funds to a different department or to a different fund or to a capital operating, and that requires commission authority. A budget transfer is the ability within the financial division, within the same department, within the same fund, to move an appropriation to a different account or to a different character. And that authority is given to the city manager to approve. So we just elaborated a little bit on the distinctions between those two.
Yeah, okay, no, that's great. And yeah, I like the idea of benchmarking with the neighbors and cost recovery, you know, memorializing some of the work that you do to date. And then I think that also the financial oversight, doing the quarterly projections, report focus, but that will always have like your current numbers. And then I think the only one that I saw that was removed, but maybe it wasn't that important, was the full cost of service under principle 3.
Yeah, we did remove that, and it was more just that we felt that the concept was already fully covered under, especially the cost recovery section under principle 1.
Okay.
And we felt like the separate section just added unnecessary duplication. So.
Oh, thank you for the presentation. It's good.
Yeah.
You can make a recommendation if you don't have any other questions, as Keith inferred, we want to take it next to the commission. So it would be great if you'd like to make a recommendation in favor of it or in favor with caveats. it's nice to let the commission know that the BAB's seen this and they've endorsed it. And a formal vote goes a long way to get us there. If
So you'll incorporate the recommendations both from what the auditor said and what our discussion was.
Yeah.
Chair would entertain a motion.
Do you want me to make the motion or you?
Yeah, let's, so you have clarification of what that says.
So yeah, I would motion to recommend to this commission the adoption, I guess is what you wanna call it, of the fiscal principle on fiscal integrity, financial integrity principles. But we need to note the two caveats, I think, that were mentioned. One being the use of the overage for only capital expenditures.
Or the language that mirrors the,
The use of, that says general fund balance, yes.
And the second,
Florida statutes.
yes,
Yeah.
As a CEO.
to adhere to the, in addition to the GFOA, the Florida statutes as best practices.
I'll second.
okay, for discussion, are we recommending the adoption of the document or just supporting the document as presented?
Spirit and the presentation. Jim?
it will be coming to them as a presentation and then subsequently as a document to approve.
Okay.
So they will approve it on an agenda.
We'll
But
recommend their
you could
approval.
weigh in that you support it or that you support approval, whatever you prefer.
And then this will go as a form of communication after we approve it in the meeting minutes, the next meeting. Okay. There's been a motion and seconded. You have what you need. Chair would like to do a roll call vote on this one. Please.
Ms. Bowker,
Yes.
Mr. Kale,
Yes.
Ms. Matillis Thompson,
Yes.
Ms. Milroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ortolani,
Yes.
Ms. Perryman Jones,
Yes.
and Chair Brown.
Yes,
That's 7-0.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Good job. Hey, staff, anything else before we, board members? Robin, real quick, just one thing, do we have a date set yet for the, I haven't looked at the work plan for the, commission party workshop or not?
That's actually, that's not on here, but it was just set for January 13th.
January 13th?
Yep, will be the date. We literally just got that like this week.
Okay. So that it pretty much confirmed with for right now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you want to quickly explain to the new members that might not be familiar what it is that works, the commission works out, please?
Sure, so the commission workshop isn't a budget advisory board joint meeting or anything like that, but it's really the kickoff of the budget cycle. So in the January workshop, the commission will be presented with a lot of context information from staff. And they're going to be setting their goals and priorities for fiscal year 2027. And the reason they do that in January is because we kick off budget development at the end of January with our staff. And we're going to be carefully designing a budget that aligns with the commission's goals for the upcoming 2027 budget year. So that'll happen at the fort this year. So it's a new location. The city, as part of our agreement with the fort, has some free rentals, so we thought we'd take advantage. So it'll be at probably starting around 9 AM. We're still determining the final details, and it usually goes until around 1 o'clock. And so it's a half-day plus workshop for the commission, engage with each other and with staff to set their priorities for fiscal year 2027.
No public attendance. No
Public
public-
is,
Yeah.
So as a resident, I
Sunshine.
can decide.
Yep.
Or a member of the board.
Yep, similar to
Yeah, but
commission
not with the
meetings.
same thing, the
We
vow.
can't speak.
No.
I mean, if the
Yeah.
commission, if the mayor asks the chair, I can speak. But you can't speak because if there's more than one of us in the room, then we violate sunshine.
We can listen.
And
Yes.
unless they advertise it as two members, more than two.
It's also going to be televised and recorded, so if you don't have the opportunity to attend on that day, you can watch parts or all of the meeting, at your leisure. From
1 o'clock.
typically it's 9 AM till around 1 or 2, depending on how long it takes the commission to discuss all the topics they'd like to cover.
I will be attending as chair because it gives a good insight as to what they're thinking for the coming budget.
Right, and we're meeting with the city manager and team to finalize the agenda and all of that, so it'll be published in advance of the meeting, so you have an idea of particular topics that will be discussed at the meeting as well.
Okay, if there's nothing else further to come before the board, is there a motion to adjourn?
I have a last one question or comment. How do we incorporate if the board choose to incorporate the spirit of the presentation? How do we action it? What for the next meeting do we prepare? What do we decide? Or is this just something we have in the back of our mind? And during the development of the development process of the budget we'll have, or do we do a little more towards establishing the ground, the solid foundation of a recommendation for the city commission? Because I'm not clear about your feedback. It's a lot to digest, I understand it, but should we have a second discussion in January about that? Or you just feel it's a background picture that you're happy to have and operate from?
Not to dominate, but I just throw out for discussion, maybe perhaps we take between now and the next meeting, you put together, if you would, kind of like when you talked about maybe one person being of a group, kind of break it down on what groups you're thinking, send it to staff, then staff can send it out to the entire, so we don't violate sunshine, and then we can, all of us individually send back to staff our thoughts on that to keep this moving.
Okay, but
Does that make sense, or?
Yeah, it does, but I want to make sure, is there some volunteer on some subjects, some subject matter expert would like to explore one area in particular and maybe report back to the board? I mean, I don't know, Melinda expressed.
Yeah, I think that that's a good idea, and I'll be honest, like okay, so to go through the exercise of, I would love to break up it into like assignments, but I don't think we're gonna get to it tonight, so I'd be willing for kind of like what Bill said, for you to give the assignments to us.
So I'm assigning, not knowing really what your areas of interest.
I think it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're all here to volunteer and to learn something new, and we're not necessarily experts in, like, you know.
My pleasure.
So I think we trust you.
And we can rediscuss or redistribute the next meeting if
Yeah.
some people feel more affinity with one theme or the other.
But I think that, like, you know, you can put kind of a, you know, basically kind of a work plan together and assign, let's start out with you assigning as you see fit and see how it goes.
Laura, you had a.
Yeah, I was just going to share that, so I've been, staffing the BAB for like 13 years, right? And the time commitment for members of the BAB is already really high, and sometimes we see in the past when subcommittees were created that members dropped off the board. And I'm not saying that this group would do that, but I think it's really important for folks to understand the time commitment based on the subject. One thing we've done in the past, and I haven't engaged with the city manager and her team on this yet, but we had during budget development, almost like each BAB member digging into one big department and partnered with that department to review revenues and expenses. And then we didn't run into sunshine violations because that person went with staff to meet with the department and could really dig in on like the operational, like you owned a department for development process. That's an option. There's a few different options depending on how much time each of you are willing to participate. We have 14 meetings of the BAB, 3 joint meetings with the commission already, which is 17 meetings of at least 2 hours or more. And that can be a lot for a volunteer.
And one thing I wanted to share is that Olivier's presentation, not just tonight, but a lot of the conversations that we've had over the last few months have really resonated with staff. And it's something that we've taken to heart. We've taken it to heart in how we're going to present additional revenue related information. We've taken it to heart with how we're presenting information on how we're using fund balance in excess of the 25%. And so staff is really here to support you all through the process. Well, I think it's amazing and I look forward to digging in. Budget is my thing, so I love digging in with people on budget. I also want to make sure you know that staff is here to support you and give you the information that you need to make informed decisions along the way. So if there are areas that you want us to provide additional information, additional research, we have done things in one way, but that does not change. If there's something else you want to see in the process as we go through it, we would love to provide that information.
So even to respond to that and to be productive, how about one person assigned to one subject will work with you and request the element of information they feel they need additional, and reports back, or you report back to the next BAB meeting about that subject. And that might actually accelerate and improve the accuracy and painlessness of it.
We would be happy to facilitate that.
The only caveat I have concerning Laura's comment, I mean, I'd like to mirror that process. And I understand there's lots of commitment, but I was able to provide it. So, I mean, if you feel like it's important for us to mark our position for 2027, which is a turning point, an important fiscal year challenge, I think we should really try to establish a solid argument and reasoning to be presented to the City Commission, even if you say that city staff is already incorporating into the exercise of the budget. Because I don't know if we were the same approach, if we could say the same thing. My spirit is we can probably say things that sometimes city staff can't say out loud or in a different style, and we'd like to provide that opportunity for you. And I remember we also are the voice of the residents, and we want to keep that dimension. So we would do it a little bit differently maybe, and that's how we complement each other.
Absolutely.
You play a role, we play our role.
And personally, I also have some concerns that we have to walk lightly to recommend, like one of the things, like, okay, we come to the commission, say, we drop the ad valorem. Well, then just tonight, the governor held a press conference today. He's big on this, eliminating homestead exemptions on property tax. I would hate for us 1 year and the general public starts saying, well, the budget board even agrees, well, we need to do this. And then 2028, when that would take effect, if it comes off the referendum of 26, it would hit am I correct? The 28 tax.
homestead exemptions, it's property
It's
tax.
property.
But he's wanting, but he's wanting to totally eliminate a lot of that. And he's saying, well, we're gonna pick up some of that out of the state reserve fund. But how much is that? Is there enough there? How many years will that last? And we have some big hits coming in 2028 with the 28 additional firefighters. So I think that's where my point is, I just don't wanna go in and start next budget year, making some wholesale changes that will, the following year regret that we recommended and give them.
It was a thought provoking, we would not probably go as far as that, but it's our work together that will determine what kind of recommendation we feel reasonable, and the definition of the terms can be suggestive without being formal. So I think it's a matter of wording, but we need to have a solid thought process leading to it. I think that's what the exercise.
So for the new board members, see how interactive we are as a board in discussion. That's what I was.
If you don't mind.
No.
It's
I'm just thinking, like, do we though individually go and research that? I mean, I think it seems like staff they've received the presentation as well. It seems like they have the, like you said, spirit of what you're trying to achieve, which is budget cuts.
But you would be the lead for the BAB to ask them all the information pertinent and relevant to that direction and report back, and then we have a visibility over what impact it has and what the elements of discussion are, which is different and not replacing what city staff is doing, and even if they are inspired by what was in the presentation. So I think it's not one or the other, but we need to take a little bit of ownership of this, I think.
Yeah. And I think that is perfect. My only thing is I think it probably is the most fair if you let people volunteer versus assigning people. I think that's the only thing I would ask as a staff member.
That's what I started with, but
Yeah,
I
versus
was.
like the assignment, just because sometimes people aren't
maybe come up with
It's
the,
comfortable, like saying I don't want
Maybe I can
this.
make a proposal and then people can
Yeah.
react to it and say, I'd rather
I'll
do
take
this.
that one,
Or I'm
yeah.
more interested in this, or I resonate more with this. I
Yeah.
think you have to like an area
Right.
to be more effective to it. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to impose that, but I can make suggestions and then, the people are generally reactive. So I didn't want to do it, but Melinda suggested that.
Yeah, I just think that there needs to be when you do something like this and when you're suggesting a process, there needs to be someone who says, well, this is like the body of things that need to be addressed. And I'm gonna start with an initial delegation like this. And then if that doesn't work for your team, then you can reshuffle it. But I just do think that at the moment, I don't think we're gonna get to it tonight. So that's why I thought that if
suggested.
you do the first draft
Okay.
and like measure each out, based on your best judgment, what the topics and the people, also taking in the input from staff on some of what they said, then I think that, that can be then shared with us and then just like, you're gonna be a subject matter expert, well, on many things, but particularly for obviously the revenue committee, like other members of the BAB can also have, a subject matter expertise.
So we'll recommend thinking across a buckets of interest as my presentation was structured.
Yeah.
So revenue can be one, event recovery fee or finance elements, financial elements would be another one.
Staffing levels, personnel costs.
Exactly, so, and then we can always readjust and.
Yeah, I mean, there, and you had those 5 areas, you had, you have CRA, you have, there's like multiple ways that you had like very good subject matter headings in your presentation. Doesn't mean that we are going to go to the same point as the presentation and come to the
Absolutely.
same conclusion, but at least it actually divided up some areas that we
Will
can
take a
work on.
life of its own,
Yeah.
depending on our discussion and
Right.
your work with city staff on each of these buckets.
And staff is correct in that, like, obviously too, with the new restructuring, like, there's new departments and perhaps like that, some of that needs to come into play where one of the members would be learning and interacting with, that particular department via obviously our BAD support team. So I think there's a few, but I do think like an initial draft done by you is definitely the way to go.
I will suggest it to city staff.
Right, and also as you look at the work plan where we would do those report backs, because obviously.
Yeah, we need
that
to put
has
some
time to do
headlines,
that,
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Not to keep
Yeah,
it, not to.
That's a good plan.
Yeah. Support.
Yep.
Okay. Not to keep us here any longer, but when do you anticipate maybe bringing Daphne in and giving us a recap of the legislature where they're at? That'd be probably about a March meeting or this, they don't officially start till what, like the 12th of January?
Right, yeah, so Daphne usually does a presentation for the commission, you can ask her to come to a meeting. Your schedule's getting a little full, so just being respectful of the time. that
If it
this-
has a significant impact on the budget, then
It's worth it.
give her the invitation to
Yeah.
come and brief us out. But if nothing happens, but I think it's more likely something will happen. But I can't, from just watching the news, just so you're aware, the House and the Senate, they're not agreeing upon it right now, so. Yeah, okay. Anything else, staff? If not, we're adjourned. Motion to adjourn.
Do we do motions?
So, Mr. Auditor, thank you for your input.
Love your outfit. It's cute, it's very.
It out. I bought this dress for Thanksgiving last year and I decided to make it a work dress.
Nice. I bought a dress for Thanksgiving